and the two arterioles. Let's look kind of like this one. So the juxtaglomerular apparatus, in a way, it describes the relationship between the distal tubule and those two arterioles. Right? It's emphasizing that they are right there next to each other, in contact with each other. And later on, we'll see that these cells actually get to communicate with these cells. So where this portion of the distal tubule that is surrounded and sort of nestled in those arterioles, all that together represents that juxtaglomerular apparatus. Does that help?
Yes.
Anything else? Got it. All right. All right, so we've got the main sort of anatomy all laid out. So we've got enough anatomy to sort of figure out or be able to talk about how this thing works. So let's now start talking about the processes that occur in the kidneys. Right? So the kidneys are going to filter blood, and when they take some subset of the blood out, it's going to sort through it, figure out what to keep, what to get rid of, and then pee out the part it doesn't want. But to do that, there are a number of different processes involved. And so we're going to go through what those are now. All right. The first one is filtration. This term should be familiar to you. We've already talked about filtration. When did that come up?
Respiratory.
Respiratory? It did?
Well,
A little bit it did, huh? And what was the context there?
When you're breathing in air through your nose, you're filtering particles with the hair and then mucus.
All right, so that, your nasal cavity acts as a filter in that case. But the word specifically filtration was where?
due to partial pressure of blood, so movement of substance from the blood into the extracellular environment.
That's exactly right. So what pushed the act of fluid being pushed out of the capillary into the surrounding area, the surrounding fluids, right? So it was half of bulk flow, right? That was filtration. You guys remember back, cardiovascular system, wasn't that long ago, right? So bulk flow, we had filtration and we had absorption. That was the opposite of filtration, bringing fluid back into the capillary beds, right? You guys are glad that we're not done with that yet, right? All right, so filtration. So filtration occurs in the kidneys, which makes sense. We've got capillaries there, so of course it does, right? So in this case, it's molecules, ions, going into the tubule lumen. So when we get filtration in these nephrons, fluid leaves the blood capillaries. It doesn't just go into some extracellular fluid or interstitial space, but instead it gets taken up into the lumen of the tubule. Because they are right there next to each other, there's no other real space for it to exist in. So when fluid leaves the glomerulus, for instance, it goes right into the lumen of Bowman's capsule. And that is filtration, just like we saw in any other capillary bed. This figure, I think I showed you this, or something very similar to this a couple of times earlier in the semester. This rectangle is supposed to represent our bodies, greatly simplified of course, highlighting a number of different organ systems. And what I really like about this is it points out how a number of our systems actually are in direct sort of communication or contact with the outside environment. For instance, the respiratory system. Air that's inside our lungs or inside our alveoli is not inside our body. Right? That space inside our alveoli is continuous all the way out through those tubes, the trachea and so forth, to this outside environment. So just because something's in our alveoli doesn't mean it's in our body. We're going to see when we get to the digestive system, the same thing's true. Just because something's inside our gut doesn't mean it's in our body yet. This tube is continuous all the way through from one end to the other. The renal system, same thing. When you're inside the tubule of a nephron, you are technically outside of the body. Because that space is continuous all the way through that tubule down the collecting duct, through the renal pelvis, through the ureter, through the urinary bladder, through the urethra, to the rest of the universe. So that space inside there is outside your body. As soon as you filter something into that tubule lumen, it's no longer in your body. All right. So that's filtration. Another process we're going to see, reabsorption. Reabsorption is very similar to absorption, right? Absorption, remember, is the other half of bulk flow. But of course, this has 2 more letters in it, so it's much more interesting, and there's something else involved in it. Right? So reabsorption is kind of like absorption, but there's more to it. All right, so reabsorption is reclaiming material back into our blood vessels at the second capillary bed. I should point out that filtration is only going to occur at the glomerulus, between the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. Filtration does not occur through the rest of the nephron. But reabsorption occurs through the rest of the nephron. So kind of, bulk flow gets split up. The filtration part of bulk flow occurs at the very beginning at the glomerulus, and the absorption, really in this case reabsorption, occurs through the rest of the nephron. We're sort of dividing up those jobs. You're not going to get filtration at the rest of the nephron, and you're not going to get net absorption at the glomerulus. What's another process? Secretion. Secretion is moving molecules or ions into the tubule lumen. It sounds just like filtration, but it's totally different. Right? So yeah, we're moving things in the same direction. Right? With secretion, you're getting rid of things. Right? We're putting them into our tubule lumen on its way out to lose it forever. Remember, filtration occurs at the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. Secretion does not occur there, but instead occurs through the rest of the nephron. So secretion and reabsorption occur at the same places. Proximal convoluted tubule, the Henle distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct. Okay. So we've got really 2 processes for getting rid of things, 1 process for getting it back into our body. All right, so if you reabsorb something, you take it out of the lumen of the tubule and put it back in your body.
Can you repeat where secretion occurs again?
Secretion occurs along the entire nephron except for at Bowman's capsule. Okay. What's next? Excretion. The process of excretion is urine leaving the kidney. So as fluid gets filtered out of the glomerulus, that fluid enters into this tubule. Right? That fluid in there is not blood. We're going to call it filtrate. As that filtrate goes through, we're modifying its contents. We're going to reabsorb some of it. We're going to secrete more stuff in there. And as we go through, what we're doing is we're taking a subset of blood and we're turning it into urine. But it's technically not urine in the nephron. It's filtrate. When that fluid leaves the collecting duct, once it leaves the collecting duct, we're done modifying its contents. And at that point, we're now going to call it urine. And so that fluid, the filtrate, going from the collecting duct into the renal pelvis is excretion. It's going from filtrate to urine. Okay. So I always thought this was kind of weird, especially in the beginning. You've got all these things going in different directions, and it seems kind of messy. You know, why dump a bunch of things into your nephron and then suck a bunch of it back and go back and forth? If you want to get rid of it, just get rid of it. Don't make a big deal out of it, right? So why keep going back and forth? Well, it's sort of a more efficient way to actually sort through a lot of your blood. And so to think about this, let's imagine that on this table I've got this really big glass jar, and it's filled with coins, right? Different kinds of coins. So the jar, let's say the jar and the table represent our bodies. And the coins represent all these chemicals in our blood. And our kidneys have to sort through all these chemicals. So let's say, unfortunately, it's mostly filled with pennies. And maybe pennies represent water molecules. And then we've got, nickels, dimes, and quarters in there. Right? Maybe the nickels are chemicals we want to get rid of, toxins. Quarters and dimes we want to hold on to. Right? Maybe those are amino acids and sugars, things we want to keep. Right? So ideally we want to get rid of all the quarters. I'm sorry, the nickels, right? You guys are paying attention? Okay. So what you could do is you could just look on the top and pick out whatever nickels that were up there, put them on the table and sweep it off and you're done with it. But how are you going to get through the rest of it? Instead, what we do is we take our big jar of coins and we're going to dump 1/5 of those coins onto this table. When you send blood to your kidneys at rest, 1/5, 20% of your cardiac output goes to your kidneys. A huge amount of your blood goes to your kidneys. They're working really hard. They're processing a lot of blood at once. So we're going to dump 1/5 of our coins onto the table. Right? Put 4/5 back on the side. That's going to go out to the rest of the body. So now we've got this pile of coins to sort through. Okay? When we dumped it out on the table, that was filtration. Right? We took a big chunk of all of that, dumped it on the table. Right? That's all our blood, almost pure blood plasma, dumped onto the table. Now what we need to do is sort through this. So what we're going to do is we're going to reabsorb most of it. All those pennies that are on there, remember that's water, we can't afford to pee all that out. We dehydrate too quickly. So we're going to take almost all of those pennies back and dump them back in the jar. That's reabsorption. We're also going to want to reabsorb those quarters and those dimes. Those are worth a lot. Right? We don't want to waste the sugars and amino acids or whatever that is that's in there that we want to keep. So we're going to put the dimes and the quarters back in the jar as well. So what's left on the table are a few pennies. We need to get rid of some water with this, otherwise things get clogged up. And there are nickels in there. We didn't want our nickels. Right? So those are the metabolic waste products. So we filtered a bunch of coins onto the table. Stuff we didn't want and things we do want. We reabsorbed the chemicals we wanted to keep. Right? Before we dumped all those chemicals back into the jar, or those coins, we might look on the top and pick out a few of those nickels. When we pick out those nickels and put them on the table, that's secretion. Right? So we had two ways to get rid of chemicals and one main way to get those chemicals back into our body. We filtered a bunch, we secreted a few, and we reabsorbed most all of the things we wanted to keep. When we're done going back and forth, we've got a few pennies, we've got those nickels on the table. Now we're ready for excretion. And when we excrete, we're just going to scoot those right off the table, and that flows out through the ureter to the bladder. That analogy work? Are you still talking? All right. So hopefully that helps sort of justify why we're going to have all this sort of back and forth. All right. Once you've gone through excretion, all that urine goes through the ureters and collects in the urinary bladder. And your bladder holds on to that urine until it's an opportune time to get rid of it. And when you do get rid of that urine, you void the urine from your bladder. That process is called micturition. It's not just peeing. Micturition. So you could also think of that as urination, right? So emptying your bladder is micturition. Okay, everybody got that down? All right, so in this figure, we've got our simplified nephron, the tubule portion in yellow. Red represents the blood vessels. So blood comes in the afferent arteriole to the glomerulus where we get filtration. So we dump a tremendous volume of our blood plasma into Bowman's capsule. The blood that's left in here flows out the efferent arteriole to the second capillary bed, or the peritubular capillaries. As this filtrate moves along, we're going to reabsorb most of it. We're going to secrete a few more things. Whatever's left gets excreted as urine. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say that you are fasting more than 18 hours. 18. Is it completely stop working or just like, because you have the same thing, the same amount of water or food in your body, so
So when you're fasting, you're not drinking water either?
no.
Yeah. So if you're healthy and everything's working properly, your kidneys constantly are working. And they're constantly filtering your blood, which means they constantly are making urine. It might just make a little bit of urine, but it does keep making urine. So you will eventually get dehydrated because you keep losing water through urine production, but also just by sweating and by exhaling because there's water vapor in there. So you lose water a couple different ways. But your kidneys are going to keep working. If they stop filtering your blood, that's really bad news. Right, that's renal failure. Even if you don't drink water. So when I didn't let you drink water for, was it 3 hours during lab, right, I did not induce kidney failure. I hope. You're still here, so chances are you're okay. Right? Did I hear it almost? Watch it. Alright, any questions about any of this stuff we've gone over? Is this making sense? Is it too fast, too slow?
What kind of muscle system? Is it smooth muscle? Like when you said like this tubular is like technically the outside of your body, the inside.
The lumen inside here is outside your body, yeah.
What is it made out of? Like what is it?
Simple squamous epithelium.
Okay.
Simple squamous? No, cuboidal, I think. Yeah, cuboidal or plumber.
I just don't have to see the last.
Most of this is cuboidal.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's epithelial tissue. Anything else for them? All right. Do you guys want to check out those tests?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Haven't forgotten about your essay exams. Still working on it. You will get those back before the next essay exam. Hopefully a lot before that, but don't get stressed about it.
Only one question.